A situation that I was walking through with my husband, Art. And in February of 2016, I found out that he was having an affair, and it rocked me to my core. I honestly can't even, still now to this day, I can't even put into words what level of shock I was walking through. So I remember part of the journey that I had to go through without knowing whether we were going to reconcile or not. God, you are a redeemer, and I need you to redeem me in the middle of this. And so I remember I was pursuing that redemption with God, and part of that was to write an impact letter to forgive my husband for what had happened. And with forgiveness, it's hard because there's layers to forgiveness. As Christians, we know we're supposed to forgive.
Yep.
But for me, I could forgive the facts of what happened. That was the easier part of forgiveness. What was harder is forgiving the impact that all of that had on me.
Sure.
I never struggled with anxiety. And now, all of a sudden, I'm in a situation that I am more anxious than ever before. So I was writing this impact letter, and I remember I wrote down, I haven't just been broken into pieces. I have been shattered. And you know, when brokenness happens, there's a wonderful Christian picture that we have in our brain of like picking up the broken pieces, gluing them back together, and God's light can shine through that brokenness, and yay, you know, sing a praise song and cue the like ticker tape parade, right?
Sure.
But that wasn't my story. I looked around and I didn't see broken pieces to glue back together. I saw nothing but dust. I was that shattered.
Jeez.
So I'm writing this letter, and all of a sudden I remember in Genesis 2, that God, of all the ingredients in the world, he had access to everything. He chose dust to use to make his favorite creation, mankind. And so he picks up the dust and he breathes into it. And so the impact letter took a dramatic turn. And instead of me ending with how shattered I was, I ended with saying, dust doesn't signify an end. With God, dust is often what must be present for a brand new to begin. A long time. I mean, I've been with him longer than I was without him. So like my whole adult life of, this isn't who you are, but then I crawled in my bed and wept like I've never wept before.
Wow.
And I felt as if the world was caving in on me. I mean, not just my circumstances, but I really felt like my future. You know, sometimes we feel like the world is caving in on us because the present circumstance is pressing really hard, but we know in a week, a month, a year, it's going to be better, right? Yep. This was not that. This was my entire future. I felt like in that moment, I was going to lose my marriage. I was going to lose the legacy that Art and I had built with my kids. I had so much emotional turmoil that I remember I went to my counselor and I wanted to. I just didn't know how. I was hurting so deeply. And I kept telling my friends, I feel like my body inside, my insides are just twisted up in a knot. And little did I know that that's exactly what was physically happening on an emotional sense, but also on a physical sense too. Because a couple of months into this journey, I woke up one morning, I stepped out of bed, I was in so much physical pain, I couldn't process what was happening to me. I collapsed beside my bed, my family rushed me to the hospital, and I was in excruciating pain, so they admitted me to the hospital because of the pain, and they started running tests, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I laid in that hospital bed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, in more pain than what I could even express. And I remember the doctors kept saying, we can't figure it out. And I kept saying, I know something's terribly wrong with me. And then Friday morning, a surgeon came in to the room and he said, Lisa, I ran one last test and we finally figured out what's happened. The right side of your colon has ripped away from the abdominal wall it is wrapped around the left side, and it's cut the blood flow off inside of you, and we've got to rush you into emergency surgery.
Jeez.
And he said, and by the way, I know you've been praying for God to take away that pain, but I thank God that he didn't answer that prayer, because had he taken away the pain, we would have sent you home, and your colon would have ruptured, and you would have died. And I remember as they were wheeling me back into surgery, I was having all kinds of chaotic thoughts about my situation, but the one thing that brought me so much peace is God was not a far removed God in my physical pain. I believe it probably took every bit of holy restraint for God not to answer my prayer.
Wow.
Because he loved me that much. Because God loves us too much to answer our prayers at any other time than the right time, and in any other way than the right way. And that's true in a physical sense, but it's also true in an emotional sense too. You know, when his promises seem to apply to everyone else around you, you know, when they're walking in the blessing of a promise, and you're just in the process of a promise,
Right.
it feels unfair.
Right.
And when his timing is so difficult, you know, 2016 was a year of extreme highs and extreme lows. I mean, here I was walking through the most devastating situation with my husband, and 3 of my 5 kids got married in 2016.
Jeez.
You know, so that when God said, you need to trust my timing, like that was a really hard, it was easy in the moment, praying and fasting, like, oh my God, I trust your timing, until I knew what that really meant, right? And sitting in all those wedding ceremonies and not telling my kids what we were going through because I didn't want to ruin their special day, so carrying it inside.
Jeez.
You know, it was, yeah, of course I had the darkest moments of my life.
Wow.
And when I felt like God could fix this, and yet he was choosing not to. That's hard. You see, we serve a really good God.
Yeah.
But we also serve a really good God who does allow hurt. And that's at that point where our feelings and our faith come in conflict sometimes.
Right.
In June of 2017, I thought Art and I were about to reconcile and that things were really turning around. And then the bottom fell out of our world again. And some things cycled back into his life that I remember I wrote a blog finally telling the world what we were walking through, because at that point it was either going to be shared with the rumor mill or I was going to get in front of it and share it with truth. And so I was devastated to write that I had said to my husband, I can love you and I can forgive you, but I will not share you. And so that was in June. And at that point I decided to take a sabbatical. So I spent a good long season of quiet and trying to get my bearings once again from just my world being turned upside down again. And then there was a day that I sat in a very pink office in a pink chair and watched the doctors attach the word cancer to my life. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in kind of a crazy way, Art was determined he was going to walk through this with me. And so he was sitting right there. And I remember I pulled up a chair that was empty. So it was Art, myself, and the doctor. And I pulled up one more chair because I thought, I'm not doing this without you, Jesus. And so I just had to see that he was there too.
Wow.
God didn't do this to me. He didn't. This isn't the way that he designed the world to be. People are not supposed to get cancer or their husband have an affair. I mean, this isn't what he designed this world to be. Sin did that to this world. Sin broke God's original design. And so in between the first 2 chapters of Genesis and the last 2 chapters of Revelation, that's God's love letter to us to say, I understand. God sees you, my friend. He sees you. He knows exactly what you're facing.
That's right.
He knows the depth of hurt and pain that you're walking through. And so he knows. He knows what it feels like to be walking through something that you feel like this is going to kill me. God changed the plan. I don't want this to be my story. And maybe you're there right now, my friend. I had to say, God, I guess if I knew what you know, maybe I could be brave enough to choose what you've chosen.
Wow.
But since I don't know what you know, I better stay real close to you.
Yes.
So that you can reveal good to me, that you've promised. You've promised good will come.
Beautiful.
And I don't see it, and I don't like the way it looks right now.
Right.
But somehow in the heavenly realms, you are shifting and arranging a good that I would choose if only I could have been brave enough to do it.